I told you you'd get sick of my videos. Here is another one. All right, so I think this is the final video where you have to like stare at me talking to myself this week. All right, so this one I'm going to be talking about the synthesis essays. Again, I mentioned this in the weekly update. You have 5 of these throughout the semester, one for each phase of our syllabus. And all the due dates are listed both on Canvas and under the assignments tab, but also under this specific assignment. If you go to the files tab, you'll see all those. You have one due September 9th. All of these are Sunday nights. September 30th, October 28th, November 18th, and then December 2nd. These are 500 words each, so it's nothing much. It's like 2 pages. But you do have to talk about 3 different of our assigned readings or viewings. Each of these are 5% of your final grade. Like I said, these are about 3 different readings or viewings that you have each week, for the different phase. But don't do outside research for these assignments. Stick only with what's assigned to you for that specific phase. This citation style I said in the previous video using MLA. This one you're using APA. So there's a little bit of a difference, but I do want you to get practice using both. The document style is 12-point Times New Roman or Calibri font. This is, if you open up Word or Google Docs or whatever, that's just kind of the standard sort of stuff. 1-inch margins. And then acceptable file types. I can't talk today. Word docs, RTFs, or PDFs. So what in the world is a synthesis essay? Since you're going to be writing 5 of them, let's find out. A synthesis requires you take 2 or more texts in conversation with each other. For these assignments, you'll be using at least 3. So again, you'll be writing one of these for each phase of the semester. So you can choose your different readings or viewings from different weeks of that phase. So you might choose, let's say, a video from this week and 2 readings from next week, or however you want to mix it up. You can choose different weeks within the phase, but you cannot choose different readings. Let's say you're working on the phase 2 synthesis essay. You cannot choose readings or viewings from phase 1. They all have to be within the same phase, if that makes sense. Okay, so the idea synthesize suggests blending together to make a whole. That's what you're doing with these essays, looking at the pieces, the assigned readings and videos, reading and watching them carefully, and blending together interesting ideas from at least 3 of them. A synthesis is not merely a summary. Your synthesis essay should clearly have an articulated argument. For each synthesis essay is getting really difficult to say, by the way, just a quick side note. It's like a tongue twister. You are required to select at least 3 of the readings and or videos from the specific phase in which the synthesis essay is due, which I just explained that. To clarify, for synthesis essay 1, you can only use readings and videos from phase 1. Once you select the readings and videos you'd like to write about, you should carefully construct an argument about them. For instance, is there a particular point of view you agree or disagree with? Why? What are the points put forth in those readings and videos that help support your own view? Here are a couple questions to help you explore some ideas in the text. So if you're struggling to come up with some of those ideas, I would sit down and kind of, whatever, if you want to type it out or if you want to just handwrite it, whatever you want to do. But I would start answering some of these questions to help you develop some ideas for your paper. What are dominant patterns of language and ideas, repetitions, emphases, tensions, and omissions that you observe in each text? Is someone kind of saying the same thing over and over but using different examples? What similarities and differences do you see in the way the authors or speakers choose to frame in the issues they're writing about? How do their theses, either implied or stated, differ? What are the main similarities and differences in their angles of vision? So if you pick all articles about artificial intelligence, people might say similar things, but they might say different ideas about them or use different examples to discuss those topics. What similarities and differences do you see in the authors or speakers' underlying values and assumptions? What overlap, if any, is there in these authors or speakers' examples and uses of terms? Now, here are some questions to help you develop your own ideas about and synthesize the texts you read and watch. So once you kind of develop some ideas about exploring the text, you might have some trouble kind of coming up with your own ideas, creating that argument. So here are some ways to kind of get you thinking about those questions. Do I have any knowledge from my personal experiences that is influencing my response to these texts? So do you have, for example, like the head transplant section. gut, like my initial gut says like that's disgusting and that's creepy, that's weird. Well, maybe that is really hindering my understanding of that. So maybe I have to put, that idea aside for a second and really kind of look at some of the facts or look at what some people are trying to say about it to really deeply understand the idea. What do I agree with and disagree with in these texts that I have analyzed? If I find one author's perspectives more valid, accurate, interesting, or more useful than another's, why do I feel this way? And how have these texts changed my perception and understanding of an issue, question, or problem? You might want to use these prompts. I used to think blank, but now I think blank. Although these texts have persuaded me that blank, I still have doubts about blah, 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 blah. It's important to think about your readers or your audience when crafting any type of writing. For these essays, you should imagine your audience as a group of well-educated peers, but ones who are not as familiar with our course topic or even texts you've read or viewed. Therefore, some summary will be necessary. But let me be clear, this essay is not about summary. Instead, it's about how well you extrapolate ideas from each text and support an argument. So just as with the interview essays, as I just explained, I have a couple different frameworks that you can select from. So framework A, the first part would be the intro and summary of all texts. Again, this is a short little section. It kind of summarizes the texts, presents your thesis, which maps out your main analytical and synthesis point. Your thesis might come at the end of the paragraph with your summaries or in a mini paragraph all of its own. So you're really putting forth an argument, like this is what all three of these texts are arguing, or this is, after reading or viewing these things, this is what I understand about X, Y, and Z. Then you would have an analytical section, which includes paragraphs discussing and developing your analytical points, and then a synthesis section, which includes paragraph discussing and developing your synthesis points. Right, so you had those two different, you have some questions above that really kind of helped you understand some of those ideas, and this is where those responses to those questions would come into play. And then finally, your concluding paragraph for Framework A reiterates the values and limitations of the text you've analyzed, pulls together new insights, and then leaves your readers thinking about your views. And then Framework B. The intro is fairly similar, although it omits this summary section, so it just presents your thesis, which maps out your main analytical and synthesis points. Then you have a summary and analysis of your first text, in which everything about the first text that you've selected is in there. So it has the brief summary, and it has the analysis. Then you have the second text, which has the brief summary and the analysis, and then the third text, again, brief summary, and then all your analysis. And then you have the synthesis, which kind of develops several synthesis points. So here's your little section where you kind of develop how they mesh together. And then your concluding paragraph, same as with Framework A, reiterates the values and limitations of the text you've analyzed, pulled together new insights, and leaves readers thinking about your views. And for the grading for these papers, again, I'm going to be using the English 212 rubric, which can be found at the end of the syllabus and then also under the Files tab. But I'm also going to be looking at how well not only do you synthesize the essays, looking for a careful understanding of the different texts that you've selected, and also looking at how well you've developed the structure of your paper too. So that's what our synthesis essay is all about. Again, you'll be doing 5 of those throughout the semester. But they are, again, they're shorter, they're like 2 pages. But it does seem like a different type of paper because it is a shorter paper and you do have to bring in 3 different sources for that really short paper. So it is a little bit of a challenge. I don't mind if you go over the word count, but I don't want you turning in like a 10-page paper. And you're like, I'm not turning in a 10-page paper for these types of assignments. All right, again, if you have questions, email me. And this is the last video that you have to see my face this week. Bye.